the truth about HOCD. Dun, dun, dun. What's up, guys and gals? This is Brian, also known as OCD Mindful, back with another riveting video about HOCD because the questions keep coming. A lot of people suffering out there with this form of OCD, and this was my main form of OCD as well. So the reason for this title today is I got an email asking the question, I wrote it down here. Can you just tell me the truth about HOCD? I know I'm not gay. I've spoken to therapists who have confirmed it and have even read a bunch of OCD specialists that say OCD threats aren't real. Okay, I have seen this iteration of this question, I can't tell you how many times. And this is the exact kind of question I was asking myself and trying to get an answer to, because I believed, like most OCD sufferers, that there was some ritual that I would do that finally, when I got an answer, it would stick. Unfortunately, I found the answers to those questions 1,000 times, maybe 5,000 times. You can read, I'm sure you've done it. You can read articles right now on Google from sex experts talking specifically about what happens to your sexual orientation throughout your life. Is it possible for a straight person to turn gay or vice versa? Has it helped you? If you're watching this video to get an answer, I'm guessing that ritual, like every other ritual, failed to provide lasting knowledge. It probably did what all rituals do, which is gave you some temporary certainty, as it seemed, and then it eluded you, the next day or 10 minutes later or even 30 seconds later. In my case, it got so extreme that all day long I was running attempts at rituals in my mind. And for the most part, it was me trying to prove to myself that I was not at all attracted to people of the same sex. And when I tell you like how much time I wasted, I mean, hanging out with my best friends, I would sit there. I mean, this was like my early 20s. This is the time where you're out having fun. And I'd be sitting there at a house party or at a bar, and in my mind, I would be vividly playing out sexual scenarios with my best friends, all in an effort to like make sure I wasn't getting aroused or to feel some sort of disgust that would thus prove that it wasn't true. I did this all day, every day. On top of a whole other slew of sort of what would seem to be more confirmatory rituals. Watching gay porn to see if I got aroused, watching lesbian porn to see if I got aroused. It was nonstop. Sorry, I'm looking back behind me because my cat is making some crazy noises. So let me answer this question the way that I think is appropriate for treatment. Okay. So again, can you just tell me the truth about HOCD? I know I'm not gay. I've spoken to therapists who have confirmed it, and I have even read that a bunch of OCD specialists that say OCD threats aren't real. Okay, well, again, I'm going to object to the nature of the question there. I've read a bunch of OCD specialists that say OCD threats aren't real. Then why are you still worried about it? That's not providing you anything but temporary reassurance. So even if that were true, right, which it's impossible to know. Someone did chime in on some comments saying, in all the history of things like HOCD and POCD, there has never been one case of anyone whose fears were realized. How do you know that? You have absolutely no idea. I have absolutely no idea. There has never been a test. Let's say there's been 100,000 people who have received treatment just in the United States alone, say over the last 5 years, for pure O type OCD. Has there been an extensive follow-up on all those people to see if one of them ever recognized that maybe there was something to it? No, there hasn't been. You have no idea. And since you're asking the question, what you're implying is you might be the first. You might be the very first. And ultimately, as you know with treatment, if you've looked into any of this stuff, accepting uncertainty, stopping your rituals that are an attempt to get certainty, is what the treatment is all about. So even if I'm going to read a little bit from some experts tonight, because I want to make another point clear here, guys. When I'm talking about specifically OCD stuff, I'm not just making stuff up. I'm not going rogue here. This stuff is coming from working with 4 different professionals that I worked with, including all of the expert books and articles that I have read. There's actually a slew of peer-reviewed research in this field. There's overwhelming evidence and agreement about what treatment works best and how to perform it. So again, I'm not just going rogue here and like creating stuff out of thin air. I'm not trying to be, Albert Ellis or Sigmund Freud. These are the things that I learned from, and that when I actually started putting them into practice, I got much better, much faster. And so the reason I make these videos is to perhaps spare you some suffering by encouraging you to trust that the treatment works, and to trust that by taking the step of accepting uncertainty and stopping your rituals, that doesn't mean that you're just going to be floating around completely clueless in the world about what you are. It doesn't mean that you're 50-50 chance of being gay or straight. All it means is you are stopping your attempts to get certainty, which are making your OCD worse. Those attempts to get certainty, your rituals, are making you worse. Okay? I'm not making it up. It's overwhelming agreement about that. And so ultimately what we have to accept to get better, to desensitize from the fear, is the possibility, as small as it may be. It's not helpful to try to put an exact number on it, right? It's not going to do any good to say, okay, well, maybe it's 1 in 100, maybe it's 1 in 1,000, maybe I'm 3% gay and 97% straight. You just can't figure that out, okay? What I would suggest instead is to stop trying to get an intellectual answer to an emotional problem, okay? This is an emotional question. It's like saying, how can I prove intellectually that I'm in love with someone? There is no way to do that, okay? There is no test that exists where we can look at your brain and say conclusively that you're gay or straight. You've probably looked at the thing where, hey, if this finger is shorter than this finger, that means you're probably gay. The amount of time I spent staring at this hand trying to figure out which finger was longer was such a tremendous waste of time and effort, and it provided nothing other than making my OCD worse. Okay, so yeah, the answer to that question, unfortunately, is you have to accept that you can't know with certainty, and that if you really want to facilitate progress and desensitize to that idea, that concept of not getting certainty, and to the accompanying anxiety that tends to come with that, then I do suggest dropping any attempt to put any percentage on it and just saying, hey, you know what? I'm done. I'm done trying to answer this question. It sucks for me because it's the most important question in the world for me. But believe me, the content is not important here. Every person's OCD is the worst thing that can happen for them. Even if you might look at somebody else's OCD and say, that's not that important of an issue, to them it feels just as important. And the treatment is the same across the board. They have to give up all of these attempts at certainty, accept the possibility, even if it's very small, that they could be the exception to the rule, and they have to purposely expose themselves, put themselves in these positions where the anxiety and the discomfort and the uncertainty raise, and then override that instinctual signal that's being shot to your brain that says we need to figure this out, and to just remind yourself that you're going to intentionally not try to solve this unsolvable problem. You're going to demonstrate to your brain that you don't need to, and then you're going to go live in real time. Okay, this is another area where mindfulness is so important, because the whole point of mindfulness is to connect with the present moment. Your fear of, did something I do in the past, was that gay? Or trying to ritualize about straight things that you did in the past. And of course, the language I'm using here, if you are gay and you're having heterosexual OCD, then just flip those two terms, okay? Worrying about, will I be gay tomorrow? I'm married now, what happens if I turn gay? Those are all either past or future problems, okay? So this question, this trying to get an intellectual answer to this question, has nothing to do with what's going on in your heart, with in your core, who you are. So go out and live in real time, right? And it might take a little while for your libido to come back, right? You should know that if you're starting treatment, you're probably going to feel worse before you feel better, because you have become so completely dependent on those rituals to get some sense of relief. And now, if you want to get better, you're going to choose to give them up completely. Okay, believe me, that's going to make you feel a little more uncomfortable at first. Okay, so as far as the truth about HOCD, I want to read a little bit here, and this is from my boy, Grayson. I worked with Grayson. I worked with the partners that he had in his office when he was in Philadelphia. John has since moved out to LA. Harold Kirby, who's an amazing OCD specialist who was partnered up with John when they were both in Philly, is still in the Philly area. If you are in this area and you want to talk to a really expert professional, reach out to Harold Kirby. I haven't seen him for a long time, and he was talking about retiring, so I'm not entirely sure if he's still doing it, but last I checked, he was. Okay, so in John's book here, there's a chapter all about Puro, and it's called The Primary Mental Obsessions. And so the primary mental obsessions are violent obsessions, sexual obsessions, which is the one we're talking about today, religious obsessions, neutral obsessions, and obsessions about obsessing. So I'm going to read a little part about the violent obsessions, just because this applies exactly to the other parts, but he only says it here in the beginning of this chapter when talking about violent obsessions. Okay, so violent obsessions. Most violent obsessions take the form of thoughts such as, what if I were to stab my wife? Or what if I threw my baby out the window? There are generally three major feared consequences that accompany these thoughts, either separately or in combination. One, these are terrible, depraved thoughts and I want them to stop. Two, only a terrible, depraved person would have these thoughts. Am I such a person? And three, does having these thoughts, all right, come on, bud. Does having these thoughts mean that I will act on them? All right. Okay, so this is the sort of important part here. The main ritual used for these thoughts is analyzing and figuring out. Same with HOCD. In an attempt to prove to yourself that these thoughts don't mean anything, you can endlessly obsess. Maybe I'll kill my wife, but I don't want to do that. I'm not that kind of person. But then why did I have that thought? Do I have a secret urge to hurt her? How do I know I won't hurt her? But I love her. Your efforts to know this answer are endless. Okay? Okay, here's the salient point here. You may come up with other rituals to protect those around you, such as saying certain phrases or somehow counteract your thoughts. Having read that people with OCD rarely act on their obsessive fears, you begin to obsess whether your thoughts are really OCD. If they are, you feel relieved because now you know that you won't hurt another person. If they aren't, then you have to worry. And what if they are OCD thoughts, but you are the exception to the rule? And still you ask yourself, why do I have these horrible thoughts? Okay, that paragraph right there is what I've been trying to say in probably my last 4 videos. And notice that John, instead of some of the other experts that are out there, uses the word rarely instead of never. Okay, this is done intentionally. Okay, having read that people with OCD rarely act on their obsessive fears, you begin to obsess whether your thoughts are really OCD. If they are, you feel relieved because now you know you won't hurt another person. If they aren't, then you have to worry. And what if they are OCD thoughts, but you are the exception to the rule? This is the possibility that you have to embrace. Okay, even as small as the chance might be, and it's not smart to say the chance is minuscule, so I don't really have to worry. Just recognize that you can't know for sure. That's all that accepting uncertainty means. So I would be careful if you're out there seeking therapists that say OCD thoughts never come true. They don't know that, and nobody knows that. Okay, and all you're going to do when you hear that is that's going to act as a temporary ritual that's not going to actually help you. If that actually worked, there would not be OCD, right? If you walked in and said, all right, I'm going to pay my therapist $300 for this session, and your therapist looked at you and said, here's the good news. You have OCD and these fears are never true. You'd say, oh, great. Well, I got that figured out. Here's your $300 and good luck. There's a reason why OCD exists, you guys, is because we can't, again, our brains are like Teflon. These rituals don't stick. Okay, these ideas don't stick. And until you accept even the small possibility that you might be gay or you might be straight if you are gay, and that you're going to choose to embrace the uncertainty, and you are going to say, screw it, bring it on. I want as much anxiety as I can take, then you're going to be stuck. You're just going to be stuck. I promise you. I have worked with a ton of people now that have reached out to me to learn mindfulness and how to apply it for OCD. This story is the same for almost everybody. Okay, now I'm going to read a little bit from Phillipson. Okay, Phillipson has an article, probably his most extensive article and his most renowned article is called Choice. You can Google this and read the whole thing if you want. But I'm going to just read a little bit of this to you as these parts are relevant to this question and to how to do treatment here. Okay, so can you help me, doc? The question most often asked during the initial phase of therapy is, doc, do you think you can help me? To this question, I always respond with some version of the following. It may come as a shock to you, but my job is not to help you, but to work with you. Therapy is a partnership in which you, the patient, decide whether this is a good time in your life to take on a great challenge. In therapy, your hands are on the steering wheel and your foot is either on the accelerator or the brake. As your partner, I hold a map with the directions and instructions, but where we go and how fast we get there is entirely up to you. Okay, what he is saying here, and this is a long article, but what he is saying here is really the progress is completely up to you. He's going to give you the information how to get there. He'll give you the key to the car. It's up to you to turn the ignition and to drive it. And the way you turn the ignition and you drive the car is to do exposure response prevention. Okay. Let me go down a little bit further. There was another important thing I wanted to read here. Okay. So again, speaking about, before I read this, Grayson goes on to use this word rarely. Okay, now I reached out to John just the other day to ask him some questions and to explain to him exactly how I'm explaining treatment on these videos, and just to double check and say, is anything off? And I was very happy to hear back from him. I mean, truly, the guy is a rock star. I wasn't sure if he'd take the time to respond to me. And his response was short, but I really appreciated it. It said, I am in perfect agreement with you on this. Okay. And one of the main questions I asked him was, to what extent should the therapist be telling their client about this idea that OCD thoughts aren't real, the threat isn't genuine? And I went on to say, the way we worked on it in treatment and the way that I made such tremendous strides was that I had to accept that it might not be OCD. And I had to accept, even if it was OCD, it didn't necessarily mean that I was safe. I could be the exception to the rule. And that it seems to me to be a contradiction if there's a therapist that is telling you to do exposure response prevention, but is also sort of deflating the threat or undermining the threat by saying it's a faulty threat, there's misfiring. Okay, so look, there are disagreements on certain elements between experts. I would say that they're minor disagreements about the less relevant and the less salient parts of treatment. But anyway, here's the next thing I wanted to read about on Phillipson, Dr. Stephen Phillipson's article on choice. So you can resist this miscued survival instinct, however, by choosing to disregard the warning signals your brain is sending you and purposefully exposing yourself to the perceived danger while accepting the possibility that the threat is real. Okay, I'll try to break that down if that's not the easiest thing to understand. You can resist this miscued survival instinct. What he means there, this miscued survival instinct, is your feeling this survival instinct that you need to ritualize. This is a miscued survival instinct. And you can override that, essentially, by choosing to disregard the warning signals your brain is sending you and purposefully exposing yourself to the perceived danger. You might be gay. You might be gay tomorrow. You might already be gay. You might be in denial. You might be so afraid of the reality of being gay that you fooled yourself into thinking that you were gay your whole life. Accepting the possibility that the threat is real. That's it, you guys. Everybody's in agreement about this, with the exception perhaps of Schwartz and his book Brain Lock, who goes on over and over to say, it's not me, it's my OCD, and who virtually every other expert in the field disagrees with about that. Okay, after this, he goes on to say, in making this choice, the choice that accepting the possibility of the threat is real, in making this choice, the OCD sufferer is engaging in an exposure exercise with ritual prevention. To know how this exercise might feel, imagine yourself standing on the railroad tracks as a speeding train bears down upon you, and as it is about to hit you, deciding not to step off the tracks. Okay, there's a lot more in this article. It would take me an hour to read it to you, but ultimately, there's perfect agreement here between Steve Phillipson, between John Grayson, and between my own experience on what worked for me to get over my OCD. So as much as it sucks, you guys, I promise you, if I could go back in time and tell myself anything, it would just be do the treatment, trust the treatment, stop all these worthless attempts at getting an answer. I'm not sure that I can talk you into it. Okay, I think there is an element of having to learn for yourself after so many failed attempts at ritualizing that there is no getting an answer. But I will leave you with one other point here, and this is also by Steve Phillipson, and this was on one of the episodes of the OCD Stories, which is an amazing YouTube channel. There's a fellow named Stuart Ralph who is himself an OCD sufferer just like us, and he gets on some of the best experts in the world. And one of the ones I was listening to recently echoed exactly what Phillipson had written in an article back when he had a website called OCDonline.com, which is when I first discovered my own HOCD. I read this article that he had about the fear of being gay. Honestly, I read it so many times that I think I could get close to being able to rehash it verbatim. And the reason I was reading it, you probably guessed it, it was a ritual. It was proving to me that, oh, it's OCD, it's not real. And there was language in that article that really deflated the possibility that it was real. So I loved that article. I wasn't taking any of the advice. I was just reading the article over and over again. But he goes on to explain in one of those old OCD Online articles, and they might still be up somewhere, that he had a patient that got better in 6 weeks. And the reason this patient got better in 6 weeks is because of his orientation. Not his sexual orientation. Let me change that. His attitude. His attitude about treatment that was, he understood that the goal was not to get an answer. You're not going to get an answer at the end of treatment. Okay? Drop that shit now. I'm not making that up. You won't need to. Okay? If you're worried that you're just going to be walking around completely clueless for the rest of your life, if you do treatment, you're going to be fine. Whether you come out straight or gay on the other side, you're going to be completely fine. What he talked about is this one patient whose attitude was just, he was so willing to put himself out, experience the threat, intentionally amplify his uncertainty and his anxiety, and to just say, like, give me the best you got. Bring it on. Bring it on. And what was interesting, Phillipson said, was this person experienced very little anxiety even when doing it. And the reason why he experienced little anxiety is because the warning signals were already taken down because he was intentionally going after it. And this is why the exposure part of exposure response prevention is so powerful. You show your brain, like, not only am I not afraid, but I'm gonna intentionally set out to confront you. It's extremely powerful. Okay. So guys, I understand how hard it is, but let me read one more thing that might help you. I meant to read this earlier. I'm sorry. This is out of Grayson's book when he gets into specifically about HOCD. Okay. So, thoughts of sexual desires that you consider perverted or unacceptable. Okay, this is one of the sexual obsessions. These differ from the above, I didn't read, in the imagined sexual behavior is consensual. The most common of these is the obsession of possibly having homosexual desires, although you consider yourself to be and want to be heterosexual. If this is a problem of yours, your main obsession and feared consequence is the same. Am I gay? The inclusion of homosexual in this category should not be taken to imply that there is anything wrong with homosexuality. The issue is the unacceptability of the behavior to you, right? And we all feel the same way about that. I got plenty of gay friends, and I had never had a thing about against gay people. It just felt wrong for me. Okay. Let's see. Okay, here's a good one. If your fears of being gay or being straight if you are gay, then your goal is to accept the possibility that you may be. Although if you are in a heterosexual relationship, then you might want to amend this to the possibility that you are bisexual. Look, Grayson's a rock star. But for a lot of you, the fear is that you're gay, not that you're bi. So I'm not going to disagree at all with an expert, but I would encourage you, right? Like if you say, all right, maybe I'm bi, and then that doesn't create any obsessions for you, it doesn't create any anxiety, then you're not going to habituate to the fear. So I might update that a little bit to say if you're in a heterosexual relationship, then you're going to have to consider that you're in the wrong relationship and that it's doomed to failure. And that could really suck if it happens. Okay, moving on. You also need to consider what this would mean. If you are married, do you have to leave your spouse if you wake up tomorrow and realize that you're gay? No. If you choose, you can continue to live a heterosexual life. It will just be second best. Nah, that's shitty news, man. I mean, I remember reading this being like, are you kidding me? I don't want to do that. Some of you may be concerned about the possibility of waking up tomorrow feeling gay and then choosing that lifestyle over heterosexuality. I can't guarantee that won't happen, but presumably, if you woke up this way, you would be happy with the decision. Otherwise, why follow through with it? In doing exposure, your answer to the question needs to be, it's better to risk being gay than to live with OCD. All right, that last sentence, I think, was the changing point for me. I'm sorry this video is going so long, you guys. Again, there's just so much to talk about with these topics. I think I finally got to the point where, honestly, my OCD sucked so bad and that I had started sort of doing enough exposure and response prevention that I got to a point where I truly felt like, all right, you know what? I'm much better off either actually figuring out that I'm gay. If I wake up tomorrow and I'm gay and that means no more OCD, I prefer that. Or two, if I simply can't ever get an answer to it. If this is just a question that I have to leave in the back room and not entertain anymore, that's better than doing what I'm doing. I know both of those options suck, but trust the treatment, and you will come to see that whatever the answer happens to be, you will be completely fine. But please, for the sake of yourselves, don't engage in any reassurance seeking, any rituals of any sort, trying to get an answer to this, trying to prove to yourself that you are one thing or the other, trying to analyze how many people that went through OCD treatment came out a certain way on the other end, or if you're 8% gay and 92%. Just go live your life in real time. Do what feels right in your heart. And stick to this treatment. It takes a while. It works. Okay? I guarantee you it works. All right, y'all. Hey, I appreciate it. I'm sure that there's going to be people that are upset about me telling you straight about what the treatment is and not giving you any reassurance here, but I'm never going to give you reassurance. I know what works and I know what doesn't work. And my goal, honestly, is to help you guys make good decisions and get better. All right, till next time, I'll see ya.